So when is your life affected a lot by slope? When you're skiing. So this is a pretty good comic to have. If you're like this, there isn't any slope. You're just going to sit there because it's not steep. Now, of course, if they lean forward a little bit, all of a sudden, that is considered a positive slope. Okay? As you go from left to right, we read from left to right, right? Wait a minute. When we read from left to right, that's going down. That's going to have a negative slope. As you read from left to right, you know, you follow the storyline, so to speak, it's going down. That's negative. This is also negative, even though the little kid turned around. We read from left to right, so that's negative. This one's positive slope. So how steep is it? Well, then you have to be more specific. Get to this page, please. And that, as I read from left to right, would you agree it's going down and therefore a negative slope? But how steep? Well, that's very steep. So the way you judge it is from, put a little dot right there, please. And the next spot where it crosses at a lattice point, that's these little dots, you know, where two lines cross. Those are called lattice points. The next chance it crosses is down there, so that tells me it goes down 6 and over 1. Down 6, missed it. There, down 6 and over 1. And so that slope has a rise over a run of negative 6 over 1. That's pretty intense. That's about the most difficult slope that there is because it's really steep and it's negative and it's rise over run always, and rise that's going down is negative, so yeah, that has a slope of negative 6. Okay, if I was going to write an equation for it then, it'd be y equals negative 6x, and then you put the number where it touches the y-axis, that one, plus 3. Does that ring a bell? I know you learned that. That's Algebra 1. You're in Algebra 2, so we have to go way beyond this. But first we've got to remind you of Algebra 1. This is one of the things on the first 20. Sorry, basic 20. One of the things on the basic 20 is, can you look at an equation and go, oh yeah, I can see the slope. How about this one? What's the slope here? Slope is rise over run. If I take a couple of these lattice points, it looks like it was just going up over one and up one, but it actually is more complicated than that. It definitely went through that one. And the next one it went through is that one. So it rose 5 and it ran 4. 5 over 4. 5 rise, 4 run. So this slope is 5/4. And then you always say x. And then you say the y-intercept, which is a 1. It rose 5, it ran 4. Make sure you really get that. Rise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It rose 5. And it went over 4. All right. Without my help, please write the equation for this one. This is the part where your brain really needs to kick in. You need to think. You see which parts you get, what parts you don't get. Think about how much rise you're getting, or if it's going down, negative rise. How much run. So how much rise are you getting? Well, I went from this point here, because they're usually going to make the line go through that spot, the y-intercept, exactly. And then it's not like I can go to here. This isn't the lattice point, so then I don't want to go here either, or there, or there. That's the first spot I see, way the heck up there. I understand sometimes this can be a judgment call, like whether it's touching at a lattice point or not. I think that was the next one. So how much did it go up? Do you agree it took a rise of 7 over a run of 1, 2. Did anybody else use 7 over 2? All right, good. So y equals 7 over 2, rise over run, x, and then minus 2 because of that. Bloop. Catching on to this? This is a typical test question on your next test. And it's Algebra 1. We'll go beyond it, of course, but we know this is not super easy for everybody. Then there's always the weird cases. What if it doesn't rise and it doesn't run? Well, wait, this one doesn't rise, but it runs a lot. So just think about it. How much slope does it have? 0. So technically, this is y equals 0x. Would you agree 0x is really just 0? But its slope is 0. It's not rising at all. 0 rise over any run. 0 divided by anything, 0. And it's going through negative 5 here, so you put a minus 5. And then what happens to this? It cancels out. And so that equation is just called y equals negative 5. Remember that one? When there's a completely flat line, then the 0x can just drop out and it's just y equals negative 5. Because every one of these spots has y equal to negative 5. The x's are all different, but the y's are all negative 5. All of these spots. Okay. And then what about the other weird case? Well, that's infinite slope. What we don't write is y equals infinity slope x, and it doesn't even touch the y-intercept. So, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't touch this. So what am I going to put for that? Well, it doesn't touch it, 0, so I can't put a 0 there. So this one's really messed up. So just like the other one was y equals negative 5, do you get logically this kind will be x equals kind? And what line are we going through? 5. If you don't understand, you could just keep asking yourself, what do this all have in common? They have different y values, but their x is always 5. This one's 5, 1, 5, 2, 5, 3, 5, 4, 5, 5. I think you get the idea. They all have an x is 5. All right, so if you see a graph like this, just a random day, and you're like, okay, now I'm supposed to know what that is. That one is a y equals kind, and whatever it goes through, because it's got a 0 slope, and it goes through 3 on the y-intercept. And 0x you don't have to write, right? So then this equation is just y equals 3. Whereas this kind of line, let's say it's going through 4 down here. That one you can't even try to write a slope because you can't write an infinity slope. And it doesn't have a y-intercept, so you can't write it like this. Y equals blah, blah, blah. It just won't make any sense. So that's the x equals kind. All right, that would have been a whole day of 6th grade or whenever you learned this first, maybe 7th. You probably learned slopes a long time ago. So, of course, you're in Algebra 2, so we have to review that, and then we have to go to, like, what the new stuff is. But all right, so go to this slide. It's slide 3. And they're just saying, if it goes up like this, that's got a positive slope. If it's going down as you read from left to right, that's got a negative slope. Just reminding you, positive versus negative. Why? Because you're going from here to, let's say, here, and that's going down. It's not rising, it's falling. But you always go from left to right. It always has a positive run. Did you hear that part? It's always got a positive run. So in your rise over run, sometimes it's going down as it runs, but the run is always positive. So in rise over run, that's always positive. Rise could be positive or negative, but run, it'll be positive. You always go from left to right. Okay, so by now, this should be easy peasy. Can you tell me the slope on these two graphs? Slope is this, slope is that. Ask yourself, how much, from 2 dots, how much does it rise? How much does it run? like I said, it usually has a perfect y-intercept, so it goes right through that dot. And the next one that I see that's at a lattice point is right there. Rise how much? 2. Run how much? 1. 2 over 1 equals 2. Slope's 2. How about on this one? Okay. Rise over run. The rise feels messed up because it's not rising, it's falling. So you do negative 2 over, how much did it run? 2. Couldn't I have just done negative 1 over 1? Yep, and the answer would be the same. Get these simplified out negative 1, both of them. The slope's negative 1 on that, either way. Okay. So if I give you 2 points, this was also on the first 20. Basic 20. In this class, we're doing basic 20. In my honors class, we're doing this higher level one called first 20. And I know some of you are really good at your basics now. You're ready to move on. But I want to get everybody through their basic 20 first. Okay, so this is one of those basics where I give you 2 points. You're supposed to know it's rise over run, which is y's over x's. All right, we're not going to do all of them. We're literally just going to do the first one. Everybody figure out, remember, start with the second y and then subtract the first y. So 22 minus 10. Start with the 22. And see what you get for your rise over your run. I'm going to ask you to compare it with the kid next to you. These 2 rows, person straight across. And you guys escape since there's nobody on the side, you shoot together right there. Actually, and then if you 2 guys compare this, great. I'm going to have Paloma. You're going to work with the 2 kids to your left. All right, compare answers with the kid next to you.
I got 3 more. I got 8, and I got 20. Actually, that's all. I got 3. So that's it. Sweet. Yeah, it's right there. Number 2 is 0 over 8. No, that's
So you subtract on both of them, and there's no negatives in it, which makes life even easier. 22 minus 10 over 9 minus 5. You should have had 12 over 4. Reduces to 3. Raise your hand if you had a 3 for that one. Okay, awesome. Now, if there was a negative, you might be in a situation where you're subtracting a negative. All right, so let's do one where there's a negative. Everybody do the middle one. You're going to be subtracting a negative, and if you have a double negative, of course, that means positive. Eight minus 8, does that mean that there's just no answer? No, 8 minus 8 has an answer. And 5 minus negative 3, this is double weird. It's 0 on the top, and it's 8 on the bottom. What do you say for 0 over 8?
actually was 8.
Nope, the answer is not 8. Do you know what 0 divided by 8 is? 0. It's just 0. So that means if you had graphed these, negative 3 comma 8 would have been there. 5 comma 8 would have been right there. Look at the slope of the line that goes through those two. Think about it. The whole point is the slope, right? I just graphed them, and that's what it looks like. No slope. 0 slope. Slope is 0. Okay. So don't be afraid of zeros. A lot of people I don't know what to do when there's a 0. Just put 0 when there's a 0. But if you're like, I don't know what this is equal to, calculators are allowed. 0 divided by 8. 0. Okay. Enough. These are some forms that you know by now. Y equals mx plus b. That's the slope. That's the y-intercept. But this one, I think less people know. And that's the key. If you want to go to higher algebra, all the other stuff is algebra. This is higher algebra. You got to know this form of the line. And once you get used to it, this is going to be the key to several questions on the test that you have on your next test. So gotta memorize this one. Like you just have to memorize it. Now, I like to tell people where they come from so that you aren't just like, trust me, this is the line. So I'm going to show you where this comes from, and I think you'll understand it. If I had y minus y1 over x minus x1 equals m, would you understand that that was just the slope equation? Y minus the y. Remember, subtract the y's or subtract the x's equals m. M is the slope. Does that ring a bell? That's just the slope equation, right? So I don't know if you've ever put this together, but it was a big moment for me in math when I realized this thing, all it is they multiplied both sides by x minus x1. Look. And that canceled that. And this is just a rearranged slope equation. That's this. It's the same exact thing. It's just rearrange the slope. So let me show you how you would use this guy. We're going to use it all the time. You start by writing it. Everybody please write it down here, except in the second spot where the y is, put an empty parenthesis. See, this is where this would have been y and this would have been x. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Just rearrange the slope formula. Do you have this written down yet? The only way this is going to work is if you stay with me. All right, now I'm going to tell you a point and a slope, and you can put them in and instantly have an equation. All right, so would you agree it's not too hard to figure out the slope? You know, it just did 3 slope problems. You guys can figure out slope. So let's say I figure out the slope is 8. To get, I'm going to put an 8 there, for that's where the slope goes. Then it's not that hard to look at a graph and see, oh, this point is on the graph. The point 7, comma 2 is on the graph. You put the point there, and the slope goes there. And that is the equation. You're done. That's it. All you have to do is have this memorized, stick in a point, stick in a slope, and you just did this new form called point slope. So now my equation reads y minus 7 equals 8, parentheses x minus 2. And once you get good at this, you'll be able to just go, oh, so your slope is 8, and your point is, be careful, the x is over here, and the y is over here. So my slope is 8, and my point is 2, comma 7. This is the algebra 2 stuff. It's not that bad. It's a point. There's where the slope goes. So if I gave you any graph, and I said, hey, this point is going to go through 7, comma 3, or sorry, this graph's going to go through 7, comma 3, and its slope is 4/3, which would be weird, but let's say it was. Then I can write the equation for it. Y minus the y1 is m x minus the x1. See, I had that in my brain. You've got to have that in your brain. You've got to memorize this. If you have to, write the slope equation and then just move the x stuff to the right. Right by the slope. Then your point goes here and your slope will go there. And they told me my slope, 4/3. And my point, it's really common for kids to just stick the 7 there and the 3 there. What's wrong with that? Well, they're backwards. X is 7, so the 7 has to go over there. And the y is 3, so that has to go there. Final answer, y minus 3 equals 4/3 x minus 7. That's the equation. You're not used to seeing equations like that. You're used to seeing equations that are always solved for y. But get used to it. This is how they're going to look. Slope, point. Slope's 4/3. Harder part is the point. And the point would be, careful, it's backwards, 7/3. Making sense to you? You feel like you understand this? Okay, I'm going to give you one more. Here's an equation. What's the point it goes through? And what's the slope? One of those answers is easy, one of them is more tricky. I'm going to call on a random kid in a minute, but I'm going to give you a chance to talk to the kid next to you first and see what you think. Careful with that point. A lot of people are going to mess up one of the numbers on the point. What do you think the point is? What do you think the slope is? Please talk to that kid next to you. All right. If you haven't already, please ask the kid next to you before I call on you and ask you personally. Just talk to the kid next to you. There's several kids that haven't. All right. The point, this is a very common wrong answer. Just a little tiny thing is wrong with it, and the slope is 4. The slope is right, but my point is wrong. You know what's wrong with it? Caden, what do you think's wrong?
-8.
It's -8. You're right. Did you guys notice this one has the minus like I always had before, but this one has a plus? That means the sign is opposite from normal. So you always have to take the opposite of this number and put in here. See, opposite of regular 8? -8. How many of you caught that before Caden just said it? All right, quite a few of you. That's good. All right, here's another one. This is go faster as you understand it. Do you see the point? You see a slope at least? Zane, can you tell me the point? -9, comma 10. Nice. Opposite of this number. Opposite of that number. Cool. Slope? 2/3. There you go. Now, last thought. What if you really needed this to be solved for y? I'm not going to do this one because it's got this nasty fraction in it, but you could distribute this if you wanted to. You could multiply the 2/3 times the x and the 2/3 times the 9. And then you could add 10 to both sides, and then it'd be solved for y. I'm just going to show you that. 2/3 times the x will be 2/3 x. And 2/3 times the 9, does anybody know what 2/3 of 9 is? It's 6. If you had taken your calculator, put in 2/3, and then times 9, you got in 6. And then y plus 10, or sorry, y minus 10 equals, and then I'm going to add 10 to both sides to get this to go over to the other side. And if I add 10 to both sides, all of a sudden I have y equals 2/3 x, and then that goes together, and that's 16. That looks like that old form you're used to, the slope and the y-intercept. That's called slope-intercept. And we got it from point slope. Okay, that's it. You learned everything that you'd have to learn. I'm not thinking that everybody here is completely dialed in, but there's one formula you have to know. please go off to the side and start this one. Y minus. What's that monster formula? Do you have a short-term memory? You know this one formula, then today isn't that bad. If you can't do this formula, gotta learn it. Otherwise, this whole homework assignment's gonna be impossible. Technically, you need y sub 1. You don't really have to put it there, but it's smart because that's what the official name of the formula is. And then x minus x sub 1. Okay, and these two are where you put the point, and that's where the slope goes. So here's a typical ACT question. The point 2 comma negative 8 is on a line that has a slope of 7. Which of the following is the equation for that line? It goes through that point and has that slope. Go ahead, stick the numbers in the right spots and you'll know the equation. Try it. Even if you have to start with, like, I don't know where the 2 and the 8 go, but I know what the slope is. The slope's just the m. So then you don't put an m, you put a 7. And it's not that bad to, like, well, where does that 2 have to go? I guess I'll put it here. And then is it doing that thing where, like, it's got a minus 2 and it came from a plus 2? Yup, look at that. They're opposites. And then this negative 8 goes right there. And I will have a negative negative. See, this needs to be a positive 8 so that that's opposite of that, which is a negative 8. So the final answer, to clean it all up, is y plus 8, 2 minuses make a plus, equals 7x minus 2. And I don't think you're really ready for this yet because it doesn't come till like tomorrow's lesson. But if you just multiplied this out, it'd be 7x minus 14. I don't feel like it's that hard. And then I'd subtract 8 from both sides, and I'd have y equals 7x and negative 14 and a negative 8 together would make negative 22. And look, it's back to the format you know and love. This one's called point slope. That one's called slope intercept. Cool. I feel like you're ready to conquer the actual homework for today, but not quite. Let's just look at these last couple slides. What's weird about this one? Well, what's its slope? What's the slope on that one? How much does it rise? 0. So the slope is just 0. So then if you're going to write an equation for that, you put in a 0 for the slope. Don't be afraid of that. The cool part is when you put a 0 in, it cancels a bunch of stuff out. Get 0 times anything is just 0. That whole thing will be gone. It'll just be 0. And then if you put in a point on this, any point, x is 3 and y is 4. Well, the x is 3 would have gone in there, but it just got canceled because there's no slope. And the y is 4. So then this equation just becomes out to y minus 4 is 0. Oh, it's y equals 4. Oh, that makes sense. See? That equation is y equals 4. So even on the weird ones, this monster y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. That's going to come in handy so many times today. Okay, next slide. It's given me a slope. It's given me a point. I got 2 ways to write this, but Mr. Server said to use this one. See, the problem is kids want to make this in a slope intercept because they have the intercept. But just it's a point and a slope. Go ahead, do this one. I want to make sure you can do this one because if you can't do this one, you didn't really get it. I'm gonna walk past. You tell me what you think the equation is. I'll tell you if you're right or not. Some people finish at different paces, but I know somebody's gonna ask me, there's a 0 going in, so it'll be like x minus 0. Can you just say x? Yeah, x minus 0 is the same thing as just x. Yes. If you want to put it as x minus 0, that's okay. But x minus 0 does equal x. Okay, let's see them. Yay, I got a chance to look at everybody's, and everybody had put in the 1/2 here. Like literally, everybody had the slope right. And a few of you had put the x and the y in the wrong spot. The x is 0, so it goes here. And the y is 7. So here's what you get. Y minus 7 equals 1/2. And I love that some people made x minus 0 into x. Because now, all I have to do is add 7 to both sides and look what happens. I started with that one form, and I got the other form. See? This is slope-intercept. See? Slope's here, y-intercept's there. We started with this form, which is called point slope, and it can easily turn into this. But you've got to have that one formula memorized. If I did down on that enough, I'm trying to make it really easy for you. Because if you have any point, and they told me the slope is 4, by looking at this, I can see the slope. Oh, wait, perpendicular? Oh, crap, I have to teach you one more thing. Sorry. Everybody look at this. It's the second to last page, page 10. Find this. I was saying, oh, just make a slope 4. Well, that would make it parallel to it. Maybe it's been too long since you had this, but if you want to be parallel to this, you keep the same slope and you'll be parallel. And then you go through some other y-intercept, like 10. I don't care. You want to obviously make it different, otherwise it's the same exact line. But if you use the same slope, those are called parallel. But if you want it to be perpendicular, I didn't notice that. If you want this to be perpendicular, that means they make like right angles to each other. A common mistake is to think you just make it -4, and it's actually kind of close. Does anybody remember in the deep, dark reaches of their brain how to do that perpendicular thing? It's kind of close to just making it -4, but it's not that. Yes?
Is it -1/4?
1/4, very good. That's how you make it perpendicular. You take the slope, you make it the opposite, and you flip it. So if you want two lines to intersect and make right angles, as in be perpendicular to each other, again, two lines that have a slope like this and a slope like that, they make right angles when they cross. That's called perpendicular lines. You want this to be opposite and reciprocal, aka flipped. Okay, so what if they said, I want a line parallel to that? Well, that tells me the slope right there. They just said the slope's 5/6. Because parallel means you use the same slope. So they just told me the slope, and they just told me a point, and as long as you memorized what I said, they just told you the slope, boop, and they just told you a point. X goes there, Y goes there, and there's your equation. And a lot of people are going to think you have to like do something else. You don't. What's minus mean? Plus. You don't have to solve this for Y. There's nothing in there that says that you have to solve for Y. Did I just put the point in backwards or something? I had people looking at it funny. I think it's right. Anybody verify you got the same thing as me? I think I did it right. The slope's right there, so I know the 5/6 is right. And the point, the -1 is the x, so it goes the opposite of what you would think. And the 8 goes in here and makes, this will be a -8. That all matches up. It's right. So what if they had said perpendicular? It wouldn't be 5/6.
It'd be negative 6 over 5.
Negative 6 over 5. You are correct. If they had wanted perpendicular, you'd make it negative and you'd flip it. Okay, that was an intense one. I actually thought we were done. I forgot that they have that perpendicular thing at the end. So there is a Schoology quiz. Let me get you started on it because my dad always said, when you're started, you're halfway done. And I think he's kind of right. Although I started a book like 2 years ago, I definitely wasn't halfway done. The point of started is halfway done is just like half the problem sometimes is just getting started on something and then it's not that bad. Caden, would you read me question number 1 of, I think it's a Schoology quiz or is it a worksheet? Okay. Did you read me please? Question 1.
What's the y-intercept for y equals 3x minus 5?
Y equals 3x minus 5. Oh, that's an easy one. What's a y-intercept? Well, do you have to enter it as a point, like something comma something, or do you have to just say a number? Because if I was just going to say a number, I'd say negative 5.
Point.
A point, okay. Then, this is a really important fact. The y-intercept always has x equal to 0, and the y is, this is the y, right? So the y-intercept goes here. If you're trying to make a point, y-intercepts have x equals 0, and x-intercepts have y equal to 0. This is in my top 20, at least, most important sayings. The number 1 is if you can factor it, you should. So far, we didn't have anything we had to factor today, but factoring is huge in this class. But x-intercept is where y is 0, and y-intercept is where x is 0. Honestly, that comes up a lot. It should be if I was going to have my pantheon of top 20 most important math sayings for this level. X-intercept is where y is 0. Y-intercept is where x is 0. They wanted the y-intercept. X is 0. Okay, so there's our first point. And I think you have to put the parentheses around it too. Does it say like a hint on like, you need to write it like this or?
They're already in there.
Oh, the parentheses are in there. Thank you very much. Got it. Thank you. Okay, what's number 2? Caden, since you were doing it, just read me number 2. Promise to be done torturing you then.
Y plus 9 equals 4, parentheses, x plus 7.
Thank you. Now I know a point and a slope already, just looking at it. But is that what they asked for?
Yeah, what is the point identified in the line?
Aha. Point. That would be there and there. But be careful. It's not 6 comma 9. Negative 6, negative 9. Why? Because it's always the opposite of this number. It's the opposite of what you would think. It's kind of counterintuitive. And then the slope is easy. It's right there. It's 4. Okay. Now you started. You're halfway done. Just keep finishing that up. If you have questions, please come on up and ask me. And that's all there is for the lesson for today.